Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Michelle Sutherland. For those of you I don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of Definity, which is a purpose-driven change consultancy, and I'm so excited to be with you all, or if you're watching the recording, wherever you are. We run these webinars every single month, and the whole point is to really share everything about the B Corp movement. So why it may be a good idea for you and your business to become a B Corp, what's really involved in the process, and an opportunity just to ask questions, because I know for a lot of businesses and business owners it can seem quite overwhelming, and you just don't know where to start. So the reason we started these webinars was to really help people just feel a bit more excited about it rather than scared of it, and just to really reassure people that there's a really steady and strong way to move through the process if that's something you choose. Or if it's not, it's just a really good way to get educated on the movement. It might come down your path later on, or it might just be something that's good value for you to know, for your customers, for your employees, for your friends, your pals, whatever it may be. So I'm just going to talk a little bit before Andre comes on. So Andre's our guest speaker as well, which I'm really excited about, to get some time with him. So he's going to pop on about 5:15. So I thought I'd go through all this sort of background to B Corp, and then what we can do is just sort of leave time for Andre at the end. And I think he'll probably have time for questions, which I think will be great. So if you have got any questions about Andre or for Andre, that would be good. So who is Definity? So we have a double mission, and our double mission is basically to empower businesses to be for the greater good and to educate young people about that as well. So how do we go about that? Basically, this was sort of from, probably as many businesses are, a frustration of mine. I've been in business for 15 years. I've worked for corporate organizations, governments, banks, private companies, not-for-profits. And, you know, I really always focused on people. And what I realized when I was in a lot of these roles, especially in my corporate role, I realized that people sort of came last, or people didn't really matter. It was always this sort of focus on the bottom line or profit. And I could just never get my head around it. And I don't know where that came from, but I was just like, if you focus on your people, they're going to deliver to your customers, they're going to return to the shareholders, everyone's happy, you know. But of course that's not the way it always works out. So I always felt this sort of battle and fighting for money to, you know, give to employees for programs, for engagement programs, and even social responsibility. I really had to beg to get some charity partners on board with one of the major companies I worked for. So I always was sort of going through my career thinking, I just did it, thinking, oh well, I'll focus on people. But there was definitely this feeling of like no purpose in most of the companies I was working for, profit before anything else, no real leadership, no real engagement of employees. So that was sort of going on in my professional career for a number of years. And then I actually started becoming a brand ambassador for a B Corp company. Actually, not back then, this was 12 years ago. It was a company called Arbonne, and I started to learn how much they developed their people and focused on their people, and how that led to results. And I thought that's actually a really cool way to go about, you know, building a business. So I was sort of doing this day-to-day job. Then I was doing this little side hustle with Arbonne, and I was sort of learning from here, and I was applying it into my day job. And then a few years went on, and the other thing that came about was I found out about B Corp. So this was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I heard about it through another B Corp consultant. Actually, she is one now as well, and she mentioned it to me. So I just started Googling B Corp, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is a framework to get businesses to focus on everything, not just profit, but a true balance. And so for me, I got really excited, because when I was in my corporate job, I never really had the framework or the tool to sort of help, you know, leaders change or help the company change. So that's when I found out about it. And then at that time, I also found out about social entrepreneurship. And that was introduced to me as a sort of concept and a movement as well. And when I studied that, I was like, social entrepreneurship and B Corp is really the future, right? We want entrepreneurs to think about the social, environmental, political, whatever it is, positive impact they can make. So the more social entrepreneurs we can create in the world, and that's why we're educating young people as well, and they get to know about this path earlier, because they are pretty much going to inherit the world's biggest problems. You know, what if we set them up for success with the tools of how to be a great social entrepreneur? And what if we had a framework like B Corp that actually allows them to create businesses to do that? So it sort of all came in around June 2020 when I was grounded in Sydney and had nowhere to go apart from lockdown. And that's where Definity was born. So that just gives you a little bit of background as to how it started. I'm just going to let Stacey in. Hello. Okay, awesome. And now our team's growing. So we've got Dana, who's awesome. She's actually so passionate about environmental issues and sustainability. She originally from Argentina, but she is an educator for Take 3 for the Sea. So that's a not-for-profit that really looks at educating young people again about how they can make an impact on plastic pollution. So Dana's come on board in the last year, and what she's doing is she's actually really focusing on that social entrepreneurship education program for our young people, and she's also helping out on this side with B Consultancy. So yeah, so I've pretty much explained what we're all about. We really want to empower businesses and educate businesses that they can use the B Corp framework to be for the greater good of all, for it to have a very strong purpose and mission, to really look after their people, to look after their communities, and to make sure in the pursuit of selling their product and service, they actually make a positive impact on their environment, as well as make profit. So that is really what B Corp is all about. If you've never heard about it before, it is a new kind of business. I would actually say it's a bit of a revolution in the business world, because I don't know about you, but when, you know, I think traditionally over the years, we've definitely moved, you know, we've definitely seen that businesses exist to make profit for shareholders. And, you know, some people call that shareholder capitalism. And this movement is sort of shifting that over to stakeholder capitalism, which is thinking about everyone. So like I said, people, planet, environment, your community. And so what B Corp are creating is this just a huge shift to empower for-profit businesses to make a difference. Because traditionally it was sort of left to governments or not-for-profits, and alone they can't actually make as much change as we'd like in the world, or they may be a bit slower, whatever the reason is. So becoming a B Corp, being a part of the community, is really aligning you to that movement and making sure that there's a quality, there's, you know, systems change, there's sustainability, there's, you know, high social and environmental practices. So all of those things is what is really being created through the movement. And the benefits of becoming a B Corp, I'll always get asked this question, so I think it's really important to talk about, like why would you even become one, and what are the benefits? So number one, you get to differentiate yourself from pretenders. So I'm sure you've seen over the years, I pretty much know everyone in this call, and I know that you're very like-minded and good-minded, but I'm sure you've seen over the years a lot of greenwashing, or a lot of companies that say they're doing good publicly or in marketing campaigns, but when you sort of lift the curtain and you go behind the company, you actually see that they're not maybe treating their employees well, or they're, you know, they're not really got the best practices around how they create the product or whatever it is. This is such a rigorous process because it goes into every detail of your business across every area. But that allows you, this third-party certification allows you to differentiate from maybe other companies that might be pretending they're actually doing good. And number two, you get to really reconnect and articulate your core values. And I would even add to this your mission and your purpose. So what I've noticed with, I think we're on our 16th company going through this process, and what I've seen, I'll just let Andre in as well. What I've seen is that a lot of companies, when they get to the first section, it's like, what's your mission? What's your purpose? And sometimes you need to just take a step back and really remember why they started the company in the first place. Like, what were the values? What was the problem? What was it they wanted to solve? What was their mission and purpose? And I do find that people that are attracted to this certification do have that, but it just maybe they need some time to reconnect that. And these questions prompt you to think, like the questions in the assessment really get you to reconnect with those things. You also get to benchmark performance. So you can actually see all other companies. There's about 4,500 certified B Corps across the world. And you can go on to the B Corp directory and you can see all those companies, you can see all their scores across each section. So there's you've got the governance section, the worker section, the environment, community, and customers. So you can go into all of that and you can see their impact. And so that's this real like high level of transparency. But you also, just let that in, you also really get to look at other companies and say, how can I do better? What is it they're doing? How can I improve my supply chain or the way that I take on suppliers? You get to really benchmark yourself with those other companies in the community. And number 4, you get to find your community. I think for me, when I first found out about B Corp and many other people, it was like, wow, like other business minds or CEOs or founders that think the same, which is in today's world, unfortunately, is quite unique that, you know, we think in this way, or we think about all the different elements and having that balance. And I do find there's a lot of collaboration between B Corps as well. There's a lot of people that partner together to, you know, do climate change acts, or, you know, they do business together, whatever it is they're passionate about. There is a lot of collaboration and a lot of change that happens between the community. And that leads on to number 5, partner with your peers around the world and really fight for, you know, things that you care about. I know Andre just joined and his business is all about that and partnering together for good impact. So I'm sure he can touch a little bit about that. And number 6, attract and retain talent. This is actually something that I think is growing with this movement. And the reason is because the younger generation coming through have got no time for pretenders. They do not want to work for companies that are not purpose-led, mission-driven, or have strong values. And they are growing up seeing the world and all the things that are going on, and they're like, God, I really want to make a difference. And so that younger generation, they really look at companies and they say, if you're not doing good, I'm not going to work for you. But if you are, I'm willing to do that. So in terms of attracting talent, it's really, really powerful. And I would say one thing I'd add here is, most people don't know this, but the B Corp assessment itself, every single question is aligned to the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So you can actually go into the assessment and see that every single thing that we're talking about or looking at is all aligned to solving the world's biggest problems. So I think that's also a really strong connection, a really strong anchor to anchor your business in, to know like, how is it you're going to help. You know, if you think of, you might think you're just a small business in this massive ocean, but actually when you're looking towards this and thinking about all these things in the assessment, and then you lead that up to the sustainability goals and the impact we want to make there, it's just this huge ripple effect, and the ripple effect across your customers and your employees and, you know, your suppliers as well. So it really is about being 3 things. So the B Corp certification allows you to look at your social and environmental impact. So they do that through the B impact assessment that I've mentioned, and you have to score 80+ points out of a potential 200. Not every question is exactly a point. It's sometimes like 0.33 or 0.37. But essentially, you want to get through those 200 questions and see where your impact score is, and to see how well you're doing in terms of social and environmental practices. The second element is accountability. So there is a legal requirement here in Australia and most other countries that you do legally commit to being a benefit corporation. So benefit corporation is actually what B Corp stands for. It came out of the US, and that's because the US actually have a benefit corporation as a legal entity. We don't have that in Australia, but what we do have is an opportunity to look at our company constitution and put in a public benefit statement and a purpose statement into our company constitution that legally says, you know, we are committed to looking after all stakeholders, not just shareholders, and here shareholders as well. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people, especially startups or founders, you know, that maybe build to sell businesses in the future, what's really powerful is that B Corporation statement and legally binding commitment stays with the company. So say that you move on as a founder, but the company keeps that certification, they have to withhold that and make sure that they do look after all stakeholders. So a really powerful thing if that's the position you're in. And then transparency, as I said before, the impact report is transparent. You can go in the directory, you can check out the scores of yourself and other businesses once you're certified. And I'm just going to quickly go through this before I hand over to Andre. So in terms of Definity, what do we actually do? So as I said before, we meet business owners and CEOs that sort of struggle with the process just in itself. Like, how do I get through these 200 questions? How do I even know what these questions mean? Because some of the language is like pretty funny, you know, you're like, what does that even mean? So we are here as consultants, a B consultant. Sarita's also on the call. She's another B consultant. So we've been trained to really help organizations get through the process, but also to improve their impact. So the first stage that we do, and I think this is the biggest issue, is that, you know, I think there's about 200,000 businesses that are registered to to do the assessment, but there's only 4,500 certified B Corp companies. So if you look at that in between, what's happening to everyone in between, I think the biggest barrier is they're not getting through the questions to see what their impact is and just getting it to the point where they're ready to submit. So that's what we work really closely on, is going through those 5 sections, breaking it down section by section, and really making sure the questions are understood, maybe tweaking a few things in your business if you have to, but more importantly, providing evidence to B Lab so that they can clearly see that you are living and breathing what you've said. So that's the first stage. If we find that you fall under those 80 points, then we can look at basically any changes that we can see within the assessment to improve your score. So that's what we'll work on. Obviously, these hours are all estimates because we don't really know until we're in it. But essentially, that's the middle part. And then once we go over 80, we've got the evidence and we're ready to submit. We then hand it over to B Lab, and an analyst will pick that up and start to review it. They'll go through all the documentation, and then towards the end of the process, they'll book in a 90-minute review call, and they'll go through lots of other things. So they might have additional questions, they might want you to provide a bit more information. So we'll be with you on that call as well, just because there's sort of things you might hear or things you might not understand. So we'll make sure we're on that call together. And then there may be a few other like additional things we need to provide after that call. So we'll just make sure we get those all uploaded. And then all going well, we've done all that, we've chatted to the analysts, they're all happy. And then you get the notification that you're a B Corp certified company because you're still over 80 impact points. So that's the sort of process. And then once you're certified, in 3 years' time, you have to recertify. So I think this is awesome because I really believe the certification is just the start point, you know, and it's about how do you incrementally improve your score and improve your impact over time to make sure you certify in 3 years. So in terms of pricing, I'll go through this because lots of people ask about the B Corp certification fees. So you can see there, it's all based on your annual sales. So whatever your annual sales are is what you need to pay annually to B Lab, we call them. So B Corp's the certification, B Lab is a not-for-profit that looks after the community. So you can see there the pricing for your business. And then what we do is we do packages based on the size of your business. So you can see there micro business, small business, medium business, and then large businesses, we actually just do that as requested because it can sometimes be a bit complex. So that's our packaging. And just lastly, we give 10% of our profit to our social entrepreneur fund that goes to educating young people all about this. So they're getting to know about B Corp and social entrepreneurship at the age between 10 and 16 years old, which is really phenomenal to get that information now. These are just some of our clients. I won't go through them all because I want to get to Andre, but it's just a selection. And what I love about this is all different sizes, all different industries, different backgrounds, different missions, but essentially all of these businesses want to be a force for good. They really want to look after people, they want to look after the planet, and they want to really do the work to get that certification to this, you know, that third party validation. So I think Andre's here, so I might just stop sharing. I can see you. Are you there?
I am. Hi.
Amazing. Awesome.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. We've got a nice intimate group. So I thought if you do have time, I could do some of my questions if I can remember them. And maybe if anyone's got any questions in the chat, just to put it in there, and I'll check. So I'll get Andre to share a bit about himself. Maybe you do that first, Andre, just because some people know you and some people don't. So do you want to just share a bit about you and how you came to being the founder of Good Empire?
Yeah, so the shortcut is I sort of spent about 12 years building a different company called Vino Mofo. It was like an online wine company, and you know, we built it to be quite successful. And But I think in me, I was feeling a real sense of growing awareness and responsibility of like privilege. You know, I was privileged and then had developed capabilities and experience. And I was like, it's a bit of an existential crisis. It's a bit like, what am I going to do with that? Like, I've got kids, you know, what you know, who are going to be saying, hey, so dad, gee, your generation really fucked things up for us. What did you do to help? Oh, I just kept growing this wine company, you know. So yeah, I think it just came to a head, and I just was like, fuck, if I'm not going to, then who the fuck is, you know, do something to try and help. So I left that and started this company, Good Empire. And in the beginning, it was just after I got over my, you know, reformed smoker type preaching of like, you all need to care about people and planet. I think I was like, no, hang on, there's enough people who care. We just need the people who do care to be more empowered to have impact and to take action. So we started doing that. So really what we built is it's an impact engagement platform. And for individuals, it's basically like a social app for good that, you know, that people can join challenges and have impact, and it's got impact point scheme, and you can basically set your impact goals, take part in challenges to meet those impact goals, and then and it's a whole gamified platform to just help you, you know, to maximize the effectiveness of human motivation. You know what I mean? Like it's built around core drives of behavior, from like purpose and meaning to progress to social influence to the negative stuff as well. And then that's the free thing. And then for organizations, it's an impact engagement platform that helps companies set impact goals and engage their people, their employees and their customers in leveling up their impact. So that's what it is. And we're still a startup, you know, but we were, you know, when I started looking at what was around and just learning, came across and learned a lot about B Corp pretty early. And I think recognized that sort of like walk the walk element of it. Do you know what I mean? If we're going to be in this space of impact, then we also have a responsibility, again, that word, to you know, attach ourselves to whatever the most, you know, hopeful movement is for companies. I reckon when I started in 2018, I was like, whoa, you know, we've got a long way to go in the world of corporates. And then within a year or two, the leading CEOs were making announcements and, you know, booking out the front page of the, you know, New York Times to make these announcements and all getting on board. And in the last year, it just feels like everyone gets it, you know, it feels like there's a step change, you know, in among the biggest companies in the world making serious commitments to it. And then you've got, along comes the great resignation, and suddenly our messaging is changing. We're like, wow, if you want to keep your people, you better fucking start having some impact. And, you know, I get probably now more surprised when I come across companies that are really impactful that aren't B Corps, including most of Australia's tech companies. They're pretty leading in culture and impact. And you know, Culture Amp just became a B Corp, which is good to see, but Canva, Atlassian, Safety Culture, they really do lead in this, but they're not B Corps yet. So, you know, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, we were really like, oh, we have to, just out of like, it aligns with what we're trying to say we're doing. And so, yeah, that's up here.
Awesome. Actually, I have a vivid memory of being on my first Zoom call with Andre, and I had no clue because we just started Divinity. So I was just like, okay, this is going to be fun. And Andre was like, I just know we need to become a B Corp. And I'm like, okay, great. So we don't need to like sell anything or have that chat. And then what was it you said? And then he literally just, I'm not got it with me, but he just then picked up the handbook, the B Corp handbook. And he's like, I've read it from page to page. And I was like, oh God, I've not even read that yet. I was like, okay. Probably the best client to have first. I actually vividly remember that. And it was such a definite, we're doing this. Like you said, we're doing this and we'll do what it requires, especially as a startup, because, you know, resources are tight. You're being pulled all different ways. So yeah, I vividly remember that conversation.
I think I was also feeling like it's only going to get harder to do the bigger we grow and the more entrenched we get in policies that aren't necessarily aligned. Yep. So I wanted to have to undo less to become a B Corp and rather just build. In fact, it's all building. Like it's a lot. It's a lot.
Actually, that leads into my next question. So when you were going through the assessments, it was myself, Andre, and Tash who's in the team, and we would get on these calls. And what actually motivated you to keep going? Because I know some people in this call were in that place where they're like they're in the depths of it, and they're like, I just can't.
Look, I'm definitely a bit of a fraud in this. Like Tash, my COO, definitely took the lead in the work. We started it together and I was like, oh God, this is a lot. And so she took it across the line. And so I definitely couldn't have done it without her. And I'll be honest with you, it took her probably she's pretty prolific too. She's a pretty prolific outputter. Probably took her a good solid 2.5 months at about 50% of her work. And she's pretty prolific. So it was a lot, right? And we didn't question its value, but she was getting pretty sick of it in the end as well.
Yeah.
But what it did do is like we would have implemented about 60 new policies and measures, and they're all really good. A few things made it easier. Like Michelle brought in like an HR consultant, I guess, who had a whole lot of policy templates. We were just like, well, look, we want to be best practice parental leave policies, we want to be best practice gender policies, inclusion policies, diversity, equity, inclusion. And so, you know, I think having the templates as a base was really handy, or even if we'd been able to reference things, we built lots of complex things like transparent salary models, and they took up a fair bit of time, but they were things we wanted to do anyway. But there are a heap of, and also we didn't like the idea of just taking an HR worded policy and using that, because we've got quite a brand, an internal brand. But in the end, we just ended up having to go, fine, fuck, we'll change the words later. Like just get the policy in, get the points, and like move on. So there was a bit of that, especially toward the end. But and things like finding path to zero made it a lot easier to track carbon emissions with like a remote workforce. Stuff like that. So something made it easier that we found along the way, but it was a lot of work. What kept us going? Look, I think we just, in the beginning, it was like a real desire, and I think we felt quite honored to be doing it. But then from about halfway, it was just like, fuck, let's just get it done. We've come so far. Don't let it drag on.
Yeah.
And that was probably
I remember you guys, I think you do this in your business anyway, but you had sprints. So I remember in the beginning, I think it was a good 3 months, and you were like, and then you went off to do another sprint. I think it was maybe your fundraising. And then you came back and did another sprint. That's what I felt really worked.
I guess we didn't treat it like a side project. We treated it as a core deliverable. So we just put resources and time to it and put it, we put it into our sprint framework, you know, of deliverables, which was fortnightly then. And, you know, and we did it basically question by question each fortnight, you know, and 6 questions I think there are there. So, and we didn't always stick to that sometimes, you know, and there was a lot of like, I think what helped us was like, we just did a fast run through everything, and just, if we had it, we put it in. If we didn't have it, we put it in a task list to create. But we answered yes to all of the things we thought we will do that. And then we went back and it was on us to then go and create those things. And some of them we needed to have had traction on. We had to let them go. I think we were sitting at around 120 points at one stage in our own calculations, and that started whittling down toward the end. And we got 99.7. How torturous is that? We were so disappointed. But we also were changing banks, and we hadn't changed banks then. Bank Australia, really like them. So slow. Anyway, that's about another 6 points. So we're like, that'll get us way across the line. But it was, so that was a bit agonizingly short of the 100.
Yeah.
Not
still
a
great score. Like an amazing.
No, but you know.
I know.
99.7.
Yeah, I know. It's annoying. The other thing I was going to ask was, Tash could probably answer this a bit better, but maybe from your experience in the beginning, or, oh, by the way, I just wanted to say, this is a really good tip for you going through the assessment as a business, and Andre spoke about it, is having some sort of project management tool to manage the actions. So they use Asana, or you can use a spreadsheet, but
we use Trello. We just set up a big B Corp assessment Trello board.
Yeah, or Trello, yeah, that was it.
Happy to share it. Like, I don't know if it's up to date, but we just basically put the questions up and all the tasks, all the things, flag things as yep, done, to be done, and just moved all of these policies. And the policies weren't as hard as the tracking measures and the proof of measure, because proof wasn't just like, oh yeah, we've got that. It was like, we have to create that proof. So we had to build in the measure, then track the measure for enough time for it to be valid, and then put that in. So again, that sort of like first fast run and highlighting those things that we would need to start tracking. Because like, honestly, it was a solid year from start to assessment to accreditation. And like at least 8 months of that year was sitting around doing nothing but waiting in line. So that was time to also get a few bits of evidence that we needed 6 months of tracking on in play, because we'd started the tracking. So the sooner you can start the long-term tracking things, the better, because there's a big queue in the assessment time. So there's plenty of time to fill it in.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you can keep uploading things as it's sitting in that queue, which is good. The other question I was going to ask was, as you were going through it, or when you were discussing it as a team, was there anything that the impact assessment brought up for you that challenged you, or maybe you went, oh, I would never have thought of that, and then you changed it in the business? Was there anything like that came up?
Yeah, there were definitely some policies that we wouldn't have addressed because they didn't feel as critical, that we definitely addressed, and they don't feel as critical because they're far more relevant for when we're a global workforce, or they're far more relevant for when, like a lot of the questions that we came across, if you were building a business in a country with, like vastly bigger wealth and privilege gaps. I mean, we've got them in Australia, but like you can't easily go out and hire 40% of your workforce as Indigenous Australians from, from underprivileged communities or whatever. So some of the things were more relevant to when we're a bigger company, but we just did them anyway. Probably the stuff that we were like, oh shit, that's going to be hard, was like supply chain, because we're not manufacturers. We're literally like a software company essentially. So, our suppliers are Trello and Facebook and Google, and, and we don't have competitors to that. We can't just go, cool, Google's not meeting the standard, we'll drop Google and find another, email platform or whatever. So we felt a bit stuck with a bunch of stuff, and that was quite disappointing. And some of the some of the customer stuff as well, we were like, oh, well, that changes our perspective to go, we're going to ask you, if you want to be using our platform, we're going to ask you what your, impact is, and what, ask you for your measures and stuff. That was probably a good eye opener. And I think it was probably like a bit humbling to go, oh gosh, yeah, we're a long way off ticking that box, or being able to even come close to that impact. And there was a bunch of stuff that was like, yeah, that's a gold standard, we won't come close to reaching, because in Australia we won't reach that, or because we'll have to be a much bigger organization to have those layers of levels of employment, or casual workers, or whatever. And I guess if we'd been in based regionally, we would have opened up a whole lot of stuff as well. It's probably more of that impact you can have in the community, whereas half the team in Sydney. Yeah. Anyway, there wasn't a big eye opener that made us go, wow, that's something we hadn't thought of. But there were lots of questions within it. We were going, gosh, that's deep. That's really, really. That's the intricacies. So I don't know if it was valuable for us for that level of stuff to address them, to be honest, culturally yet, but it was an eye opener to go, we're going to come across that, or that's the standard out there.
Yeah. Cool. And just before, I'm just going to have 2 more questions. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Why are you excited about this movement?
I'll tell you what. So I think when I was, the answer is because when I first started Good Empire, I was going, right, we didn't know what we were going to do. And I came up with an idea, just like B Corp. And then I found B Corp, and I was like, well, that's already being done pretty well. we won't add to that. So then we were like, cool, that's a great idea. And I think I started researching the founders and what was behind it and their path. And I was like, this is a really good systems change business idea. And anyone that cares about this needs to get on board it, because it could really change the fucking world, you know, like really from a business's perspective. Not just because of, not even because it's important for individual companies. It's not important for individual companies, but this wave that drives change and pressure of change and drives pressure for companies to meet the expectations of customers and employees. I think it's so powerful for change. So, and this is probably one of the most effective things out there. You know, we just need as canonical a measure on packaging, like for products, to, you know, and then you'll change consumer behavior. You know, this will change business behavior, that'll change consumer behavior. And then we won't need to sit around fucking complaining about Scott Morrison, because he won't, we'll all just be doing stuff anyway. And we'll vote. Anyway, that's why. And I think, so yeah, I really admired the idea behind it. And I sort of saw great potential for its traction. And I felt early enough in it that it, you know, sorry.
I think there's just as you get sunshine coming in your window.
Yeah, it's quite pretty.
Oh, there we go.
So that was definitely I definitely went, yeah, I really admired what they were building.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of, I feel really weird asking this question, but I thought I'd ask it anyway. Did you because I got huge value from working with you guys, and you know, some of the stuff, I must say, out of all the companies I've sort of been working with, you guys are so advanced in so many things and detailed. Did you get value from having someone like me as a B consultant, or just having that sort of additional support to get through it? Because that only came about, B consultants only really came about, not even as we started, actually. I wasn't even
it was brand new. Yeah, I think the accountability was like, you know, the accountability like a coach gives you accountability, you know, like, I don't know, if you have a mentor, you know, the rhythm is as important as the advice. And we definitely found that, like we definitely would have taken much longer without doing it with you, and therefore it might have petered out. Probably the big help was just your recommendation to and reference to the things like Path to Zero, the HR consultancy. You know, I think we were able to always go, is there anything like that out there already that we can use as a model or copy or utilize or subscribe to or something? So that was probably the real help. It meant we didn't have to take on the real sort of proactive and emotional labor of the whole exercise. We just had to do the work, and Tash had to do the work, so full credit to her. But I know she would have gone, at least I don't have to carry the ownership of it. And you know when you're trying to manage something, it's another burden you just have to carry, because it has to be front of mind. You have to take the proactivity and the creativity of it. You have to carry it, and you have to, you know, whereas we were able to go, oh, well, good. And then up would come the fortnightly meeting, you know, with Michelle, and we go, oh shit, we better quickly blah, blah, blah. So that was really, really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing, like having someone, we actually call them beekeepers. So having someone within the organization that sort of owns it and is responsible for sort of driving it forward internally. So I can sort of meet with that person or a couple of people, but that person that's going to be the sort of driving force internally, I think is really important. And then them sort of, again, taking that responsibility to share amongst the other people in the team and get them involved, or at least to share what's going on and what it means, is really important. We've got a question here from Stacey. Hi, Stacey. She's from Anova Energy. Thanks for sharing a bit about the certification journey. I'm also interested to hear a little about the ongoing effort for tracking, reporting, and recertification if possible. So
yeah, we're pretty early. So you know, we literally and we haven't got much manual tracking, except for things like gender pay gaps and stuff, which we were doing anyway. And that's pretty easy to do. You get a new employee or you lose someone, recalculate. That's pretty easy. The difficult stuff would have been the carbon emissions, and Path to Zero just look after that automatically. We literally didn't have to think about it once we got on with them. And it was probably the biggest amount of work that we all had to do and foresaw having to do if we were going to do it manually by spreadsheets. Like we had already framed up the team and gone, we're going to have to do this weekly. There's going to be a sheet you're going to have to fill out weekly. It would have been a nightmare. Worth it, but a nightmare. So yeah, but we do have one of our clients actually, a B Corp called MyHaven, and they were going through their first recertification process when we hooked up with them. So that was pretty interesting, and it sounded like it was every bit as cumbersome as the first one.
Yeah.
So you know, but again, I think they were really enjoying the process. We asked them a lot about it because when we first signed them on, we were about 3 or 4 months into our process. So yeah, but same deal. They had to assign really a project manager, and that had to be at least 50% of their role for a good 2-3 months. They're a bigger team, about a team of about 80. So, you know.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I think it's really important because I see these businesses freak out when it comes to the recertification because they've not put things in place that really align to the pillars within the B Corp sort of framework. And so I think it's really powerful if you can almost like keep, not the same intensity as you do to get certified, but keep someone or some sort of element of what you've learned from that into your overall strategy as a business, and look for those incremental improvements. So there's a little, most people don't know this, but in the tool, in the assessment, you can set goals for the future, and you've got reminders that sort of tell you 3 months, 6 months. So if you feel that you've fallen short or you couldn't answer yes to that question, but you really, really want to do it, put it in there for like 6 months or whatever it is, and really build it into the conversations that you're having. So it's funny because I think when you do that, and I've already started to do it, when people talk to me about their business, I'm already thinking community, question, impact, banking. Like I'm already like, so I think if you can start to really or continue to keep looking at that assessment and use it as a tool, like for the future, it means when that recertification comes, it's not as much as a, you know, like a real struggle because you've already been proactive from, you know, the moment you certified. Does that answer your question?
We'll probably put it way out of mind for at least a year.
Yeah.
You know, we'll keep, obviously the things that we are built in as measures and policies are in and keep executing on. But I reckon we won't be sitting there looking for improvements on points. The bank was one we carried over, and that's, you know, that's one that we'll keep on. But I don't think we'll be looking for other things. But I mean, there's a, you know, I guess the things are in now, right? And it's not only some policies, it's a decision-making framework.
Yeah.
So that's what it carries through. But yeah, I'll be perfectly honest with you, we're not going to be logging into the B Corp side. But what we are doing now is focusing on how can we engage, because of what we're doing, how can we engage the 4,500 B Corps in what we're doing? You know, how can they help lead our platform movement? So, you know, and yeah, we're sort of going, you know, we want to put a challenge together for B Corps to set impact goals as a cohort and all participate together. And we'll create a membership pricing thing that's virtually free just to do that, so that we can, you know, so I don't know, that's real value for us. And we're also aware of not being mercenary. Hey, we've got our certification, how can we market to the B Corps? So we're more like, how can we do something that works for us, but also really works for B Corp, like as a marketing thing for B Corp to grow. So that's pretty cool. But I definitely think I can honestly say we didn't do it for the marketing benefit. I think I assumed it wasn't, we would never capitalize on that. And I don't even know if, I think it's still early enough that I wouldn't say that people that don't know the space very well would look at that if it's just a logo on our email signature or our website, that you get much use out of it. But I think really connecting with and being part of this cohort and tuning in with the stuff that goes on and partnering on some things So you can communicate about it, not just look what we're doing, but look what we're part of in terms of gender equality, look what we're part of in terms of this policy or this blah, blah, blah. I think that's probably, we're seeing that as a good way to get value out of it. Sounds like the wrong way, but where the value we get out of it is very aligned with the growth of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got to jump off now, sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much. There was one more question. I don't know.
I'll answer that. You don't need to read it. So 12 months now, it took 4 months of work and 8 months of waiting with little bits of work on the feedback. It was a long queue. And I reckon we sat around for 6 months until the B Corp official assessor came on and asked a few questions and then interrogated a few things and asked us to update a few bits of evidence or clarify a few bits of evidence. That was so little work from that point. So yeah, it was good, concentrated 2.5, 3 months of work, and then bits after that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre. Really appreciate your time. Have a good evening. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you.
And I'll just, so if anyone's got any other questions, we have got a bit of time. Is there anything else you would like to ask? We've also got Sarita here, who's a B consultant. So just, let me know if you've got any questions or comments.
Michelle, I'm interested in, that was really interesting to hear. It sounds like you have to be quite agile and follow an iterative process because, it sounds like you have to juggle a couple of things in the air at the same time. So as I said in my question, for an established company, they would need to review all their policies and processes and then either update or chuck them in the bin, create something new, kind of. How difficult do you reckon that is for larger companies who generally struggle with being agile?
I think it's sort of, Sarita, you can add to this if you want. I feel as if with larger businesses, some of the workers section, they're actually probably going to do really well and it'll be more straightforward because they're big enough where they have got those policies in place. And some of them are like, quite standard, but some of them are quite different. And you might look at the standard policy that you've got as a large business and sort of say, actually, do you know what? We want to change that. We want to improve that. So I think for the worker section, in terms of policies, larger businesses would be really straightforward for them. I think other sections, around their environmental impact, if there's not been much work done there, then obviously that's something that could take a bit of time. But what, like Andre was saying, was what we've done is we've set up partnerships with other organizations like Path Zero, like Trace, which is another sort of organization that really helps you to understand your impact, your environmental impact. So there's definitely parts that can help you with certain sections, especially if you're a larger company. But I would say you don't really know until you're in it. In governance, I think governance would be a strong one for large businesses because you do need to have, certain things in place at a certain stage in business. So I don't know if Sarita, you want to add to that in terms of large business.
Look, I think that the biggest thing is the people engagement. How do you get people to come with you and on that journey of wanting to be carrying it together? So that collaboration piece is really big because yes, you can have the policies, but if you're going to make that change, how do you, and one of the ways of doing that is to get them really early involved in the process and having those conversations and really framing it up at the start of this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. But we need people to come on board and champion that. I think that already creates that sense of, okay, let's do this together rather than it coming from the top down. We feel it's a good initiative, but not, people, especially now, are very much about what's in it for me. So how do we sell that to them? What's in it for them that will get them engaged and running with it? So you can go like, okay, we are in the collaborative mode. That would be the only addition. That's
a good point. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I have one more in terms of, policies and answering questions. You obviously have to provide evidence when you submit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's basically, after each question, there's a comment field. You can do links, you can do attachments, you can write things. But yeah, and we really aim to have evidence for every single question, because when it gets to the analyst stage, you don't know what they're going to pick. So the best thing is to have everything just with evidence, and then when they pick whatever they're going to pick, then it's already there, and it's sort of later down the track, it sort of saves you a bit more time.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Just on the evidence, I was wondering, how formal do these pieces of evidence need to be? Can it just be as simple as a PDF, or do we need to have some sort of system in place?
Yeah, it can be anything. Some people do screenshots, some people do PDFs, some people do a link to their website where they've got their impact report. Like it really depends, but they just need to see that there's something, it was even like one of the simple questions around governance is, do you have regular team meetings and, share financials? So there was something about that. So it's just sharing, okay, well, when do you have the team meeting and how do you share the financials with your team? So that could have been an email, it could have been like a team agenda. So yeah, it can be really simple things, but then, some other things they need to, have a proper document. Like the policies, normally all the policies, you upload the handbook and it's like section 5, whatever. But yeah, it just depends on the question, but anything is welcomed in terms of evidence. Thanks, Daniel. Any other questions? No, I think we're good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really hope that was useful. Really just, excited to bring you, Andre. You'll agree, he's a bit of a force of nature. So when he talks, I get excited again. But yeah, oh yeah, and Sarita just reminded me, I actually forgot to share this. Thank you, Sarita. She knows she's on it. I'm just going to share this with you because I wanted to finish off with this. So we've got a workshop coming up that Sarita and I are delivering. I'll just share it so you can see that, okay? Yeah. So it's just something we come up with because some people aren't ready to do the packages and in terms of that one-to-one sort of mentorship. And so Sarita and I got together and we were like, what do people need? And it's almost like a little bridge to completing the assessment. So we've designed a 2-hour workshop. We're doing it next Wednesday. And it's going to be online, but essentially what we're going to do is it's going to be like a very practical workshop where we're going to be in the assessment. We're going to be showing you different things. You will have the opportunity to ask questions of both of us. So if there's stuff you're really stuck on, then this could be a really good way to sort of get things answered. So yeah, we decided to do that because it was just a whole bunch of people that are going through the same challenges with going through the B Corp the assessment, or they might be at the very beginning as well. So you sort of bought into the idea, but you've not started your assessment, you don't even know what track to select, and it's sort of like the basics of how do you set up, because you need to make sure you're on the right track, for example, because there's 75 different versions of this assessment. So you need to make sure if you select the right track, you get the right assessment with the right questions for your business. So there's things like that that we'll talk through. So the setup of the assessment, how you add team members, how you navigate it, and yeah, and any questions you want to ask about the assessment itself. So we're doing that next Wednesday, and the link is there. It's on Humanitics, but I can send you a little email after this with those details as well. And we will have Andre on there again, and he'll probably go into a bit more detail just about their self-assessment and things that they've done. So yeah, it'll be really cool. So I just thought I'd share that with you. But other than that, have a great evening and thank you for your time. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks heaps.
So much.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.